We want to talk about, it's been talked a bit about this today, which is Gen Zs. And really thinking about, from a CMO, the modern CMO, which you are the modern CMO, or a rockstar CMO.
Maybe. In fact, Vito just gave me a new name. This is great. Right on my card.
So I want to talk about challenges you're going to have with Gen Zs. And some of the things that we'll go through some trends.
Yeah.
I do have them here. I know we said, hey, I'm not going to have any notes, but I'm a consultant, so usually I have a PowerPoint behind me, but I got notes here, just to make sure. But really, one of the things I get asked a lot when I say, hey, you need to focus on Gen Zs. I actually get brands who come back to me and say, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. Because sometimes you'll tell me, you need to have a personalized conversation with your customers one-on-one. You need to think about what they're doing. But now you're telling me to talk about this demographic, and that's completely different. And while it's true, there is differences, but in our research we see behavioral pieces that makes them a little similar. It makes them different than us Gen X's. No one cares about it. But it makes us a little different about that. But so, from your point of view, you are the Gen Z CMO.
Yeah.
That is true. American Eagle is the Gen Z retail.
Yeah.
How do you go about making sure that you're understanding the diversity in that demographic? You're making sure.
I think the honest answer is a little bit nuanced. So I like to say that Gen Z wants to be different and the same at the same time. And I think maybe everyone did when they're 15 to 25, but Gen Z, and we're going to probably get into some of this, they often talk out of both sides of their mouth, if I'm honest. I have two Gen Z daughters, so I can say this out loud. We hear a lot that they vote with, or they use their credit card, or mom and dad's credit card, I should say, to vote for their values. Well, honestly, I call bullshit, because they're doing a lot of things that make no sense when they're supporting companies like Shein and Temu and others. We've heard that all they do is they're addicted to their screens and they can't get off it. Again, I call bullshit. The reality is that mall traffic has never been better at American Eagle. We're beating mall average in the high single digits week after week after week. And we just reported a gangbusters Q4, largely driven by our stores biz. So the reality is they're social creatures. Yes, social media, but they're social creatures. They want to get out and experience the world, and they had so much taken away in 20 and 21 that I feel like they're out living their best lives. I actually kind of want to live this best life. So I think Gen Z is so nuanced, and at a company like American Eagle, we are the #1 retailer for Gen Z. What we try to do is not come across as this massive monolithic corporation, because that is definitely not what Gen Z wants either. And so we have 900 stores, second largest retail store fleet in America. We try to make sure every store feels like a community store. We even have an influencer program called My AE, where individual store associates are influencers in their individual communities, and that makes us not feel like a quote-unquote chain. We're kind of more of a neighborhood store for them.
That's interesting. So you're utilizing your store associates who are Gen Zs.
We have 35,000 store associates, vast majority Gen Z. Why wouldn't we tap into them? And listen, I feel like in my long retail career, I've been in this chair at Calvin Klein, at Abercrombie, at Gap, and now here at American Eagle. My approach to my job has shifted. Calvin and Abercrombie was high touch, high control. I don't want to call them all-knowing CMOs, but there was a lot of I say you do, and the reality is it's kind of flipped upside down now. The reality is we're not in control anymore. I'm certainly not in control anymore. The customer's in control, and the one thing I look for in associates that work on our team is Gen Zs with the conviction and confidence to come up and say, Brommers, you got it wrong, or I want to play devil's advocate, have we thought about it a different way? That is what Gen Z is actually good at. The Gen Z is a hustler, and they are not bashful to share their points of view, and I view that as a good thing.
I have two Gen Z daughters as well.
Yeah.
I can attest to that. I also have two alphas. They're even worse.
Here we go. Yeah, it's funny. Gen Alpha is just beginning to dabble in our brands. For most of us, we know that this is middle school and younger. So it's a fun time to be in this gig at this place, because Gen Z, while certainly bullseye target, alpha beginning to emerge, and this interesting phenomenon through the pandemic is actually the millennials somewhat came back to this brand. And I think the stigma of walking into an air quotes teen retailer was gone because many of us were shopping online, and then people started wearing our jeans. And we're the #1 seller of jeans to Gen Z by far, but a statistic that sometimes people find fascinating is we're the #1 seller of jeans to women of all ages in the States, bigger than Levi's and everyone else. And I think that this millennial audience has been dabbling again with our brand and find especially jeans as a go-to category.
And you do Gen X as well.
I don't know. I'm probably not a typical person. We were actually laughing over there. I'm wearing a premium line that is called 8077. That is probably for the older side of the demo. And even then, I'm probably the older side of that.
We say experience.
There we go. Yeah, right, exactly.
You touched on a little bit there, we're talking about who's in control. Because I think about when I grew up shopping, I went where the stores were. I didn't have that much control of what I wanted to do. I also didn't have that much control of what was there. It was what was in the mall.
Yeah.
That's where I went. But nowadays, you just talked about it, that Gen Z actually has the control. So from a marketer's point of view, it kind of flips in the sense, beforehand you were trying to be customer centric, but now it's the generation, Gen Zs, they are in control of what's going on with your brand.
It's so true. So let me give you a compare and contrast. So when I was head of marketing for Abercrombie, we were creating an exclusive environment that was purposely exclusive. And I'm not proud of some of the things that the brand did, but we can all agree that that was one of the great retail concepts of the last 25 to 30 years, and everything was thought of, down to, of course, the famous scent in the store that drove parents crazy. So we turned up the music, we turned down the lights, we turned up the smell. We didn't want mom and dad to, not just in that community, we actually wanted mom and dad to actively hate the brand. And it works, right? It worked really. The flip side now is Gen Z actually wants to be with mom and dad. Obviously, a much more inclusive generation. And the reality is the way that this generation shopping is completely different. And so the store experience, which again is so important to us, generally starts with someone walking in with a screenshot or a TikTok or a snap of a celebrity influencer or a trend. I want this or something like this. And we now have the privilege and the complexity of working with about 600 creators every single season, because that is how this generation is interacting. And then it's just kind of a final point of how we are definitely not in control. Back to school is our Super Bowl, obviously very jeans focused, and you worked for 9 months of setting up this perfect campaign. Just this past back to school season, we soft launched, when I say soft launch, literally no marketing support, a Halloween collection that dropped in July. And you know where this is going. Guess what was the #1 search for term on our site for 10 consecutive weeks at the height of back to school? Halloween. All these TikToks, all this stuff, and that's when you just have to say, okay, we're going to rip up the playbook that we had planned, and we're going to go where the customer wants us to go. And we worked widely successful, but that's one glaring example. But honestly, it's almost every week. I could point to something that surprises you, and that's why I think as I reflect on my personal journey, but also what I need from my team and what any retail marketing team now needs is that speed, agility, and flexibility. Because if you aren't able to turn and burn, even for a $5.5 billion company like ourselves, you will not win out there right now.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Also, I think the piece is you are so in tune with your customers that you understood they just want Halloween, so we're just going to give them that. Yeah. I think that is probably a lot of change where in the past, there's a stubbornness of, no, this is what my merchandising was going to be, this is what my marketing plan is going to be, I laid it all out, and this is where we push it through. I think now the customers, the loyalty has gone up. Loyalty in the Generation Z is a little weaker than it would definitely.
For sure, yeah. I think we're fortunate because our best at is jeans, and that's a category that is fit intensive, innovative, technology driven, and especially we're 70% female in terms of our customer base. When she finds the right pair of jeans that gives her that confidence and makes her feel hot, she's going to stick with that brand. So we're probably a little bit more, but to your point, on tops, these kids are going through everything and anything because they have that one moment at the Taylor Swift concert or on TikTok or whatever it is, and then they're going to, I hope, throw it to Goodwill. Sadly, some of the stuff they're buying probably won't even last more than one wearing. But anyways, that's kind of the reality of their lifestyle.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think we talk about social commerce. Then you touched on that with the TikToks, and we look at it. Social commerce is a driving influence. It's a driving channel. Whether the transaction happens on the social, it's actually where the awareness is really being driven from Generation Z. Now, the elephant in the room is right now that they're driving it by TikTok.
Yeah.
And we know that. I think eMarketer put out a stat that said 33% of Gen Zs have bought something based on an influencer, which is a huge number.
Which honestly, it seems that the number to me should be 100%. But yeah, it's a big number for sure.
And then you look at it going, how do you pivot and take into consideration where possible restrictions or anything like that with TikTok?
Yeah.
Because it is the social channel that is driving social commerce. Right now.
Yeah. Our perspective right now is business as usual. I am not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. But my gut is that this ban is more unlikely than likely, and there's obviously going to be a lot of grandstanding in the course of the next couple of months. We're in an environment where we're all friends, but I'll tell a little funny story. My college freshman daughter was home for the weekend, and I asked her what she thought about this TikTok ban, and she looked at me dead on, and she goes, "Dad, why are old people so fucking stupid?" And so I just wonder, if there's going to be a lot of grandstanding, but right now it's business as usual, and it is really the #1 performing platform for us. But in this gig now, you obviously have to be aware of other things that are going on. But I think there's going to be a lot of noise, and I'm sure I'm going to have to respond and react to that. But I think at the end of the day, this probably just continues on business as usual.
Yeah, and I think it brings into we talked about the modern CMO.
Yeah.
And you talked about it, you have to be agile, you have to be nimble. It's no longer, I think there was a quote that I saw you say, it's no longer a bad man kind of theory. It's that they can tell you what to do, and it's like, yes, listen to that.
Yeah.
Now you also have to think about with the digital and all of these things, all of the social pieces that are going on to it. So you've got to be in tune to everything that's going on that is affecting your customer base. Yeah. Really interesting flip in the last.
And I think the hard things are when to jump into it and have the brand say something, and then when not to. And I've actually found that the no is sometimes harder internally than actually with our external customer. And navigating really heavy issues out there is tough. I'm not saying this from a political sense or whatever, but we took a stance after the horrible acts that happened in Gaza in early October, and put the Israeli flag on our 26-story Times Square billboard as a statement to support people that were affected. And that's a polarizing stance, but we thought it was the right thing to do, and we'll continue to step in where we think it's appropriate, but we can't do everything, because at the end of the day, we're selling jeans. It is interesting, the conversations that I have to have in this role as opposed to 10, 20 years ago, where that just wouldn't even come into the day-to-day conversation.
It's interesting because with Razorfish, one of the pieces we look at, we try to connect brands, we go from purpose to performance. Mm-hmm. If you've got a strong purpose that resonates with your audience, it will lead to better performance. Mm-hmm. And you talked about that a little bit of what you guys did with that situation, but also everyone says, well, Gen Zs are the most purposeful, driven shoppers out there. And you talked a little bit, and that's where I look at it. my two Gen Zs, I do have one, she's 17 going on 67, she's old soul. But her mindset is, yes, I'm not gonna shop with a brand that I don't agree with. My other daughter is like, I don't care, it's Lululemon, I got a Pinterest board that I'm creating all kinds of stuff, and it's just what's cool.
Yeah.
So it's like, when you think about this purpose to performance, are Gen Zs any really different than some of the other generations?
I don't believe so. And I think we have to do both, by the way, though.
Yeah.
But if I'm just being really honest in a small room, is the number one and number two drivers of purchase for my brands are trend and value. And I'm going to be very honest. Guess what the very last purchase driver is? And it's like number 35. It's values. Now that doesn't mean we should not do what we do in terms of all the great work the teams are doing in sustainability, all the great work that we're doing to make an impact in communities, and I can go on and on. But the reality is I don't care if you were guys in the 80s, the 90s, whatever, the same thing is true. I think they want to look and feel the best and get out in the world and live their life. And I'm really glad that one of your daughters is taking that stance, and there clearly are Gen Z customers that do that. So I think it's an and, not an or.
Right, yeah. And I think with that, you talk about just that you're not focusing on the purpose of sustainability.
Yeah.
What is the purpose that they want to get from it? And so that's leading to a good performance. I think your idea of being attuned to it, your results show that you guys are on the right track, for sure. I think the other piece that a lot of people talked about, and I sat in a lot of sessions, even in January at NRF, which was, what's the role of the store?
Yeah.
And we think about it, especially with Gen Zs, you had the digital boom that comes out of the lockdown, and everyone is shopping online, and you saw social commerce explode, e-commerce exploding at that point. We're back down to a normal trajectory, but everyone's like, well, what does the store play in this? Gen Zs don't want to be in the store. They want to be online. They want to be in the metaverse. They want to be here. So does the store have a place?
So the rumors of the death of the physical store are greatly exaggerated, right? So, and it honestly couldn't be more untrue. In fact, last week, just after you and I were having kind of a pre-conversation, there was a headline, I think it was Ag Week, that said Gen Z and Gen Alpha are driving the success of the American model. And that's certainly the case for our business. And as I just mentioned, the traffic trend is so in our favor right now. And because our customer base is really Gen Z, you know that they're out and about and wanting that physical interaction. And the reality is, for our business, a store's customer is a more profitable customer. You don't have the shipping costs, you don't have the return headaches, all this stuff. And so someone shopping in our stores is a good thing. And when we do all the research we do, there's one thing that is consistent, and I'm now going to paraphrase from a beautiful statement that one of our customers said is, when I walk in your store, I feel this warm hug. And I am seen for who I am, my body, my skin color, someone giving me great service and getting me to something that makes me feel my best, look my best. And you can't duplicate that in digital. Listen, we have a more than $1 billion digital business. It's very important and growing. But the stores business is so important. We launched a new store design last year. It tested so well that we're rolling it out as fast as we can. And that is capital intensive, hard work. We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't think we were going to get a very, very solid return. So I think that, again, this being out in the world is something that Gen Z and Gen Alpha share, and retail stores ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, I think that.
And by the way, just to add, how many of us see these D2C brands opening retail stores as quickly as they can?
Yeah.
Right. So they know something as well. So we're real bullish and excited about physical retail.
Yeah, we agree that the idea of the physical store going away is ludicrous.
Yeah.
Just a plug for the shop talk at the end, I guess. But the idea is also, when I heard that comment, it was a very self-serving comment because it came from digital-only retailer.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so to me, when I look at it, especially with the new players coming on into the US, where it's Shein, Ting.
Yeah.
I think it was the Super Bowl that told me how to pronounce that correctly.
That's right. Yeah.
They aren't going to have the store presence. And so they're not going to have that connectivity where I think about things of being a unified commerce.
Yeah.
The awareness can happen wherever.
Yeah.
And the transaction can happen wherever.
Yeah.
People still love to have something.
And I think for those of us that do have physical stores should actually use it to our advantage more. We, this holiday season, actually called it the 5th quarter, because by the shipping cutoffs, you couldn't get stuff from Shein and all the other places.
Yeah.
You could still come into one of our stores and get it. And honestly, we kicked ass in the 5th quarter, and it was really one of the reasons why we had such a strong 11% revenue growth in Q4. So I think that is going to be something that we, for any of us that have stores, should be more open to and aggressively lean into.
Yeah, I would definitely think about, if you talk 5th quarter, double down on that, because right now the supply chain and the logistics of buying something from Temu can take a little longer.
That's right.
That's right. I had experience. I bought something and
And sometimes they don't even show up.
I bought a Halloween decoration in October and it showed up.
Yeah.
And I mean Christmas decoration in October.
Yeah.
It showed up when I was taking everything down.
There we go.
Okay, that goes into the next year. So and that is, I think, from your point, you can own that engagement. You can own that. That is where people still, regardless of what we do or plan, we're still buying last minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you still want it now.
And I think any modern CMO is looking for what is the differentiator for your company, your brand in the marketplace. Human beings are an advantage at American Eagle, and we want to make sure that we exploit that advantage in the physical store. Cool.
We didn't touch on this yet, but I think we'd be irresponsible not to mention AI.
Oh, dude, no. I've joked in the last couple of days that how long will it take for us to get here? So here we are. We're here. Let's go.
I didn't know if we were going to run out of time.
Yeah.
I guess, how do you approach that? Because one thing with Gen Z we do find in our research is authenticity means a lot to them, and it's a driver for them. I think, well, we talk about that purpose piece, but authenticity is key. And if you lose that, you've lost the trust, and that's right. Or also, loyalty is out the window. So once you lose them, you're gone. Right. And with AI, that can happen rather quickly.
Yeah.
If you're not done right.
So I think below the line, we're moving a group. I'm going to explain that in a second. Above the line, we're being cautious and having some tough conversations. Below the line, that's media, that's operations, that's planning. We're moving pretty quickly, and from a media perspective, especially in terms of the world of marketing, the results we're seeing are incredibly encouraging from Meta, from TikTok, from Google, and others that I think we're all in, off we go. But one of the values of our company is being real. We don't retouch photos. We have all the things. And so, what does that mean in AI if you are manipulating content? I still think there will be a place and way in. We haven't figured it out, and we're having tough moral, ethical, legal questions around it. But I think that if the digital age, the .com age, was maybe the most transformative parts of my personal career, I think AI will probably be right behind that. And so, I think all of us are going to have to play the game. We're going to have to do it in a way that's still true to the companies and brands that we work for. That's great.
I think okay. The last thing I have, what advice would you give somebody starting in this industry, starting in the marketing side? Because things have changed, but what are the pieces that you would give to somebody?
Love this question. I often say that we practice retail at the speed of Gen Z, and even if you don't have a Gen Z customer, I actually think speed is probably the biggest thing that has changed in my 25-year career. You have to be so nimble, so flexible, and so ready to go that you can't overthink things anymore. And the reality is someone is paying, I think now 0.8 seconds at a time to your brand, new product, or whatever it is. So just don't know where to go. So I think speed is probably one thing. I'm going to sound very squishy when I say this, but I actually think it's helped me in my career, is be kind. I think just being a good human being has set me apart, sets our brands apart, and I think it's set individuals who are hoping to get into this profession and have really long, successful careers apart. So being a good kind of human being, I know it sounds crazy, but I think that actually sets us apart. And I think that the third thing is always being curious. And I think, I'm learning, and I think I'm pretty good at this, but I'm learning every hour of every day. And then to take that curiosity and have the conviction and the confidence to stand up in a room or speak up on a Zoom to C-level executives or other leaders in the company is something that you need to succeed in retail and or in marketing. Great advice.
I think that was really it. If we want to do it, open it up for questions. Yeah.
Gen Z, a lot of them are under 18.
Yeah.
Still, and you start talking about Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
Like data insights, data capture, it's notoriously hard to get information about young people who are using their parents' information and cards. How does American Eagle do it?
We lean pretty heavily into our loyalty program. We talked about this. There's 22 million people in our loyalty program. To your point, is it mom and dad's credit card? Is it the kids that are wearing it? I think the reality is we look at AI is probably the number one thing, but the upcoming changes in Google will probably be one of the other bigger things that's going to happen as a marketer. And so we identified that a couple of years ago, and we're all in and trying to capture first-party data, and loyalty has been a big differentiator for us. And really happy, I forget the exact statistic, but we're the number one or number two most loved loyalty program in retail. So I think that anything that companies can do to lean into something like that is probably wise.
Hi, my name is Colleen Coyne. I'm with Ad Marketplace. First of all, I want to tell you, you're absolutely fantastic.
I appreciate that.
Love
That's
your
really
brand
kind.
and
Thank
love
you.
the speech and everything. So I have a senior at Clemson University. His name is Sean Coyne.
Yeah.
And I hope he has the opportunity to work for someone like you.
Oh, I love that. Thank you
Yeah,
very
so
much.
thank you.
It's very hard to say.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Craig, here comes a hard one.
Okay, let's go.
So I love the store discussion
Yeah.
and the importance of stores.
Yeah.
There is this really interesting trend that's been happening over the last couple of years where if you look at European footprint, square footage of retail environments versus the US, we have enormous stores.
Yeah.
And this trend of sharing space, setting up additional retail environments within a retail environment have become a really interesting trend. You guys have done some incredible collaborations with Elf and some others.
Yeah.
Talk to me, like when you're looking at that concept store, these Gen Z and Alphas, they're looking at a lot of different brands at the same time. How are you looking at that from a retail environment perspective? And you mentioned some of the big bad kind of competitors with Shein and Temu. Shein and Forever 21, like they're already putting their stuff in stores. So, what do you think about that retail environment, and how are you considering that stuff?
I think what you're hitting at is choice and urgency, and I gotta have it now, is probably the mentality of Gen Z. We redid our Soho flagship in New York. It's now called the Gateway to Soho. We have all the brands in our portfolio in one store. It's been super interesting to see that all boats rise, or whatever that saying is. Yeah, but we're seeing enormous comps because she could be shopping Aerie. She might want to get offline labels. She could go to Todd Snyder. She could go to 877. Want to buy jeans from American Eagle. We have a new men's activewear line, and you can buy that. So I think that choice, experience, and one other thing is, I don't think all of us, if we're in retail, are in retail anymore. This is entertainment. We're in the entertainment business. We're in the battle for attention, right? So if you're giving people more choice and more options, you likely win. And so when we work with our real estate partners at Simon and other places, we're trying to see if we can have adjacencies. And you have Aerie, AE, offline, right next to each other. We generally win when that happens.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.